Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of FPL Fanzone. In today's episode we are going to have a look at a chip strategy or a couple of chip strategies for now and the end of the season. So we'll review all of the chips, best places to use them, how to get the maximum value. We'll look at the predicted double game weeks and blank game weeks that are coming up. Now, one caveat for this video is that these are predicted at the moment. I've taken these from sources on the website. None of these are confirmed doubles or blanks, but based on what we've known from previous seasons and based on some very smart people who have been doing this for a long time, this is where we predict that the doubles and blanks will happen. Of course, there may be some variation depending on things like weather, depending on other events that may impact football moving forward. But without further ado, let's get started. So as we move into the second half of the season, personally, I still have all 5 chips available to me. So we've all got our second wildcard given to us in game week 20. And of course, some people have used that already. But if we have a quick look through the chips, we'll discuss when and where they should be adding value to your team. So the first up is the bench boost. Now this gives all of your players on your bench that score points will be added to your total for that one game week. So we all know I've had weeks where my bench has scored like 20-30 points, and that's really frustrating because obviously that's points that have not been scored, but the bench boost allows that to happen for one game week. So a couple of things to take into consideration here. If you play the bench boost on a double game week, then the minimum score you should really be expecting is 16 points. So if I just break that down, if a player just plays 90 minutes and does nothing else, they get 2 points. You've got 4 players on your bench, which means they'll get 8 points in total. And if they're all playing twice in that same game week, in a double game week, a minimum you should be expecting from a bench boost is 16 points. So as long as you're getting more than 16 points, you've done okay using your bench boost. So realistically, what you want to be looking at is having either a bench that has some in-form players that have got really good fixtures, or multiple players on your bench that have double fixtures, or all of your players in the perfect scenario on your bench having double fixtures. The one thing to be careful, of course, is rotations and injury risks, because if you're playing your bench boost, then there's no value to your bench because they don't sub anyone out. So if there's anyone that's missing from your team, you want to make sure that all 15 players are playing 90 minutes in both games. Otherwise, you're not getting the full value of that bench boost for that as well. The next up is the triple captain. And I think 27% of the game have already used their triple captain, so about 73% still have that chip available. Now, of course, triple captain just means that in a single game week, your captain gets 3 times their original score instead of the 2. So actually all you're getting is a bonus of 1 times your original score on top as if you're normal captain. So it's not a hugely powerful chip, but a lot of people use it on Erling Haaland when he got his hat-trick early on in the season. So of course that can make a massive difference because you get an extra 23 points when he got that early on in the season. So ideally the best point to do that is when you've got an in-form player playing 2 game weeks against easy opposition. And what springs to mind is obviously the potential Liverpool double against Everton. I think they're also playing Wolves in the same week. So that could be a really good one to triple captain Salah. You're getting it in 2 game weeks against an in-form player against 2 weaker defences. So certainly one that we'll be looking at as we go through this video. The next up is the free hit. Now the free hit only lasts for 1 game week. You can completely change your team, make as many transfers as you like, but then after that week, your team reverts back to the team it was before. So this is not used if you want to try and replace long-term injuries. If you're trying to fix a team that's got lots of people that have one week suspensions or short-term injuries and are expected to be back, then it can be. But where a lot of engaged managers use the free hit is either when there is a blank game week and a lot of your team aren't playing. And as an example of that, for example, if Newcastle get to the League Cup final, then the Newcastle Crystal Palace game will not take place in game week 29. Now, I already have 3 Newcastle players and 1 Crystal Palace player in my team at the moment, so I would have no bench and I'd only 10 outfield players playing. So therefore, using a free hit to change it for that 1 week, so I don't have to move out my Newcastle players, for example, is a good use of that chip. The other example is, of course, to use it in a double game week. And there was a big debate last season around whether you should use it in the blank game week in game week 29, I think it was, or the double in game week 33. Those that used it, like myself, in the blank game week got no value whatsoever. It was one of the lowest scoring weeks ever. But those that used it in the double got really high gains for that as well. But with the reduced amount of doubles and blanks this week, it's going to be a lot harder to fit that free hit into a double game week, and we'll look through that, why that's a challenge moving on. Next up is the Wildcard, and obviously we all have one of those available between game weeks 1 and game weeks 19. This allows you to make unlimited transfers in one game week at no cost to you, and those transfers are permanent, so they stay with your team moving forward. Now, this is a really great chip if you want to reset your team, if there's a good fixture swing for a couple of clubs that you want, players that you want to bring in, or if your team is decimated by injuries and suspensions. And it saves you having to take, -8 or -12 or more to fix your team up as well. Now, where the wildcard works really well in the second half of the season is that you can use it and pair it up with, for example, play it just before a bench boost, and therefore you can set up your team so that you've got 15 players that are playing double game weeks the next week, and then use your bench boost, and then you've got all of your players, all 15, playing twice, which can be really, really powerful towards the back end of the season. And we'll have a look at that in the upcoming fixture planner. And then lastly, the new chip, the assistant manager chip. Now, we don't really know where the best value for this is yet, but there's a couple of things to take into consideration with the assistant manager chip. It's not just a free chip to use. There's budget required for you to buy a manager, so anything between 0.5 and 1.5 million. It lasts for 3 game weeks, and bearing in mind the rules state that you cannot use 2 chips at the same time, for those 3 game weeks you cannot use any other chip, and also you can transfer your manager across those 3 game weeks. So the early thoughts are looking around the community is that you use it in a double game week, so you're getting four games for the price of 3, so you're getting the extra value, and then there's a bit of choice on whether you stick with someone like an Arna Slot and just hope that they get better results. But obviously with the bonus point system for teams beating other teams that are 5 places above them in the league, it does make sense to be looking at potential riskier teams and trying to get that bigger reward. So that middle of the table is quite congested at the moment. So if you can get someone at the bottom half, look at someone like a Manchester United or a Tottenham that are out of what we would say is their normal position, and they're playing someone who's higher up the league and they've got a chance of winning, then they may be looking at that as well. So the assistant manager chip is an interesting one, and there's some quite unique strategies that we'll be looking at towards the end of the video on how to use that as well. Don't forget, guys, if you do like this video, if you are getting value from it, please click the like button, hit subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, as I'll continue to give updates when these predicted changes are likely to happen throughout the season. Okay, so let's now look at the predicted doubles and blanks. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, these are still predicted. None of these are confirmed yet, but most of the doubles and blanks will be confirmed about 2 or 3 game weeks before they actually happen. The challenge, obviously, is that doesn't give us a lot of time to plan. So this video will just give you a predicted of when they're looking to do, based on previous seasons and fixture congestion. And then obviously we'll confirm these as we get closer to each of the deadlines. So the first one here is the Liverpool-Everton game, which was postponed earlier in the season for bad weather. And we expect this to be in either game week 24 or game week 25. Now, we're just waiting for results from the Champions League, and if Liverpool need to go through the qualifying phase to get into the second half of the Champions League, then we expect this to be in game week 25. Currently, they don't need to go through that qualifying phase, so we do expect this to be in game week 24, which coincidentally is the same game week that the assistant manager chip becomes available to be used, so you can't use it before then. So it only impacts two teams. It will be Everton and Liverpool will both have a double in either game week 24 or 25. So this is the smallest double of the rest of the season that we predict so far. The next up is the first blank of the season, and by blank I mean that there will be certain teams that are not playing in the game week, and this is of course the League Cup final. So game week 29, 2 games will be moved from this game week. So currently, as it stands, looking at the results in the first leg of the semi-finals, Newcastle are beating Arsenal 2-0 and Tottenham are beating Liverpool 1-0. So if we take that scenario, if it's both those games finish 0-0 in the second leg, then Newcastle versus Crystal Palace and Tottenham versus Fulham will not take place in game week 29. Now, things to consider here is that, for example, I already have 4 players between Newcastle and Crystal Palace. So I would need to start to transfer those players out to cover for that blank in game week 29. But for example, if if Arsenal go through, I only have 2 players between Arsenal and Chelsea, and therefore I can put them on my bench and cover it. So you need to just be careful of which players that you have available when you're thinking about blanks and doubles moving forward. So with this in mind, as I said, we don't have confirmed who's in the final yet. It is looking like Newcastle and then a toss-up between Tottenham and Liverpool at this stage. But of course, with football, that can change. We will know that as we get a little bit closer to game week 29. Now, in game week 33, those 2 games that have been moved are likely to be replayed in game week 33. So whichever 2 fixtures we lose of the ones we just mentioned will be replayed in game week 33, because that is the first real midweek session that's free with no European games or no other cup games, which will allow for the doubles to be played. The next up is the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Now, we could have up to 4 games or 8 teams being affected in this session. So currently in the FA Cup, all 20 Premier League teams are still in the Cup, but you do have the likes of Manchester United versus Arsenal and Aston Villa versus West Ham. So we know that when we get to the 4th round, at least 2 Premier League teams will be playing in game week 34. Now, because there's only 4 games, as I said, that can impact as much as 8 teams that will not be playing in that game week. So we'll look a little bit more around how the FA Cup is going to impact that particular game week. And then, of course, all of those doubles are likely to be replayed in game week 36. Now, there is a chance that they're played in game week 37. But game week 37 does have the FA Cup final and the Europa Conference League final, I believe. So there's a European final and a Cup final. So it's unlikely that they're going to play those doubles in game week 37. So again, we don't know who those teams are going to be like at the moment. If you do want to have a look at predicted teams that move forward, FPL.team and Planet FPL have put together some predicted doubles game weeks based on favourites going through in each of the rounds. Now, of course, with the FA Cup, there's a draw each one, so it's just picking based on percentages of teams winning the actual FA Cup. So I haven't included that into these slides, but if you'd like to see it, let me know. I can do it in a future video coming up as well. So if you look at these as an overview, game week 24 or game week 25 will have 2 teams affected. Then the blanks and the doubles in game weeks 29 and 33 will have 4 teams impacted, and so they're going to be medium-sized blanks and doubles. And then in the blanks in game week 34 and a double in game week 36, there's going to be up to 8 teams, depending on how many Premier League teams progress in the FA Cup. So you've got the small double in game week 24/25, you've got medium blanks and doubles in game weeks 29 and 33, and then you've got the big blank and the big double in game week 34 and 36. So let's have a quick look then. The League Cup and how that impacts. So as I mentioned, there are 4 fixtures that are likely to be impacted, and of course only 2 of these will make it into the final. So it could be Arsenal-Chelsea will move into game week 33. It could be Aston Villa-Liverpool, which would move into game week 33. So then, for example, Liverpool would play Aston Villa and Leicester in the same game week. It may be Fulham-Spurs, in which case that Spurs will then have Fulham and Nottingham Forest in that game week, but it also means that Fulham would be playing Spurs and, can't see them on the list there, Chelsea in that game week as well. So none of these are particularly exciting doubles, but of course just any player playing twice, you can pick an informed player from each of those teams. And then the last one is of course Newcastle Crystal Palace, and if they make it to the final, then Newcastle will play Crystal Palace and Aston Villa, and then Crystal Palace would play Newcastle and Bournemouth. So there we go. That's how the League Cup is going to impact, and we'll know once more after the second leg has taken place what that's going to look like for game week 29 and game week 33. Now, with the FA Cup fixtures, obviously they're a long way off before we get to game week 34. So the third round is taking place as we speak now. I think it's just started. The fourth round is in game week 25. The fifth round is in game week 28. The quarterfinals finish in game week 30. And then the semi-finals take place in game week 34. So we should know by the end of game week 30 who's going to be in the semi-finals for game week 34. And as I said in the previous one, if you look here, for example, in the third round, there are 2 all Premier League ties. So Aston Villa, West Ham and Arsenal, Man United. Now, once those ties have concluded, 2 of those teams will be guaranteed to play in game week 34 as long as their opponents haven't been knocked out as well. So, for example, if Arsenal get through, then all the way to the semi-finals, then they're not going to play. But if Arsenal get knocked out, for example, their game against Crystal Palace is more likely to go ahead. So it does get quite confusing. There's a huge amount of permutations as we move forward, and I will continue to update this and manage this. If you want really good insights, there's someone called Ben Krellin to follow on Twitter or X. He does great spreadsheets and updates on predicted doubles and fixtures and blanks moving forward. And of course, you can always use the FPL.team website as well, which is really, really great updates. And they'd have predicted doubles and blanks for you to visualize as well. But this is how the FA Cup is going to look. But as I said, we won't really know completely who's going to be missing in game week 34 and doubling in game week 36 until we get to game week 30. So with all of that in mind, knowing what chips we have available, and of course not everyone has all chips available at this stage, let's have a look at the rest of the season. So as there are no more doubles between now and 24, I'm just starting here between game weeks 24 and game weeks 38. Now the first thing to take into consideration is the assistant manager's chip. Now if we're going to be using that over a double game week, which we do predict will give the highest potential points value, then there's only game weeks 24, game weeks 33 or game weeks 36 that you can use that assistant manager's chip. So with that in mind, there are 3 different variations of the strategies that we've got at the moment. So let's take option 1, for example. We're going to be using the assistant manager chip in the double game week in game week 33. So because we've got that, we don't want to use it using in the blank. Therefore, we have to use it the 3 game weeks ending with the double game week in 33. And therefore, that leaves us the double game week in 24, the double game week in 36, and then the 2 blanks in 29 and 34. So first up, it does look like the best option for triple captain for those that still have it is going to be Mo Salah in either game weeks 24 or 25, depending on when that double is. They look like they have really 2 good fixtures. It'll be the Everton game, who have now just hot off the press, have just sacked Sean Dyche. So Everton will have a new manager in at the moment. They're not looking great at them. So therefore, and then they've got I think it's either Leicester or Wolves in game week 24 and 25. So either of those doubles are going to look really good. Salah is in an insane run of form at the moment and is scoring lots and lots of points. So getting double his a double triple captain makes a lot of sense there as well. Then what we do is we start to dead end into a blank game week in game week 29. Now, because there's only going to be 4 teams that are missing from that, and depending on who they are, as I said, if Newcastle get through, that's a little bit harder for me because I already have multiple players that are out. If Newcastle and Liverpool get through, that's even worst case scenario for me because I've got multiple Liverpool, got multiple Newcastle, and I've got Crystal Palace players. So yeah, it becomes, and I've got Aston Villa, so I would have to almost free hit out of that scenario. So it is really team dependent on this, but of course, until we know those final fixtures, we're going to have to look at this moving forward. Then what you do is after that free hit or after that blank, you wild card your team. So you then set up for the final 8 games of the season. You use your assistant manager chip between game week 31 and 33. Remember, that lasts for 3 game weeks, and you can transfer your manager each week if you wish, so you can look at good fixtures for that as well. In game week 34, when you've got the big blank, you use your free hit then, which is of course going to give you your most value, so you can change your team to all of the players from teams that are playing that week and be able to field a full team. And then what you do is you use your bench boost in game week 36. Now, of course, by that point, you've got to make sure that you've got a team that has a decent bench for those doubles and enough doubles there with it. The second option is that if you use your free hit in game week 29, it means you can't use it in game week 34. So what you do is you then dead end into game week 34, which is going to be obviously a little bit harder because there's a lot more games predicted to be missing in game week 34. So you will likely to have a few players missing at that point. And then what you do is you wild card in game week 35 and then straight into that bench boost. So you make sure that your wild card is, you set up your team so that you've got 15 players that are doubling in game week 36. So there's pros and cons to each of these, and they all use the same strategy, just depending on where you want to use that assistant manager chip for that as well. And as we don't have the confirmed fixtures for each of those, it's really difficult to kind of give you that update on when's going to be the best option for each of those. Currently, I'm looking towards the option 1, but realistically, as we get a little bit closer and as those fixtures become more available, I'll have to make decisions based on my team. And of course, I will be doing videos, updates as soon as we get confirmed or doubles or blanks, and as we get through the rounds of the League Cup and the FA Cup, I'll update on this channel as well. So I just want to say a big thank you to FPL Harry, who did a fantastic video around chip strategy as well. I've taken a lot of information from there. As I said, pulled a lot of information from Twitter, from the likes of Ben Krellin, and also the FPL.team and the FPL Planet websites as well. And then, of course, I also use Fantasy Football Hub as my tool to help manage my team moving forward as well. So hopefully this has been really helpful for you. If it has, let me know which strategy you're thinking of for your team. Are there any questions that you have? I know it's quite complicated. There's a lot of variations and options here within that within this. If you look at, for example, option 2, you can see that what's really switched here is all we've done is we've switched the triple captain from game week 24 to game week 33, and then vice versa for the assistant manager. So there's no real change there. And then the last one is that we've switched the bench boost with the assistant manager on that as well. So there are some, as I said, some variations of this, but this seems to be a really good option for that as well. There could be, for example, if you take option 3, if you could move your wild card closer to, you could move it to game week 32 so that your bench boost is set up and that you're set up better for the end of the season. You'll have more information for that as well. So there is always that options in option 2 or option 3 to move that wild card to game week 32 if you don't have to dead end into game week 29. And again, that will depend on the fixtures for that as well. So there's lots of variations. These seem to be the popular ones at the moment, and if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will come back to them as quickly as possible. So once again, everyone, thank you very much for watching FPL Fanzone. I hope this chip strategy video was helpful for you and has started to get you thinking about how to use your chips and when to use your chips throughout the rest of the season. Please don't forget to hit that like button. If you've got this far into the video, you deserve to give me a like button at this stage. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and the notification bells if you want updates for when those fixtures are confirmed, when those blanks and doubles are coming in, and what I'm going to be doing with my team each week throughout now and the rest of the season. Thanks again for watching, and may all of your arrows be green.